I'd like to call this joint Boothby Region Town St. Andrews Task Force meeting to order. First, I'd like to ask that since it's September 11th, that we all take a moment for a moment of silence to remember the tragedy that was 11 years ago today. Thank you. I'd ask that we stand and pledge allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to comment on it.
Yeah.
We had an executive session earlier this evening, and Jim, if you'd like to update folks.
Like we discussed with the public previously, is that we have hired an attorney. The attorney has given us a memo on his thoughts, and since that information is confidential, we wanted to deliver that to the task force privately. We scheduled that in advance of this meeting so we didn't have to displace anybody's time, but it is actually something that officially happened that is attached to this meeting, but the public wasn't privy to. The meeting was productive, and we did everything that we needed to do during that meeting, so thank you.
Next on the agenda this evening, we have Representative Bruce McDonald. Bruce.
Thank you, Chuck. I just asked for a minute to summarize that there's a small group working on the idea of transitioning, I'll put it simply this way, transitioning St. Andrews from its current form of governance into a community hospital. We met this morning. There are 6 or 8 members of that group that met this morning, and we did review, first of all, we did review with the town manager what the status of their discussions with St. Andrews was after our last large meeting, just to get a sense of what that had resulted in. And you probably will report out on that, will you?
Yes, sir.
So we heard what that was so that we knew what we were dealing with to a little better degree than we would have otherwise. We looked at what it is, what does it mean to be a community hospital, what is that? And I distributed to the group, and we'll make available to all of you 2 documents that I have so far. One is the bylaws that govern the Mayo Community Hospital in Dover Foxcroft. It gives you a good sense of how a community hospital form of governance would have worked or could work in the future in managing a hospital like St. Andrews. I think it's really interesting. The primary things I think are A, that the board of a hospital like that is elected by the people and is responsible to the people through town meetings or through regular voting procedures like that, and is responsible for all of their decisions to the people. A community hospital like that can not only get money for fees, but it can also accept gifts through charity. It can also go out to bond if it needs to, and it can also raise taxes. Now, nobody wants taxes raised. Nobody wants to go borrow money unless they have to. But it would have that kind of power if you give them that. If that ever came to be, that would be part of the mix of how a community hospital would operate. So the 2 documents, on the other document that I have access to and made available to the group and is available to you, is the legislation that originally created that Mayo Hospital back in 1973, I think it was, something like that. It's a model for the kind of legislation that we would need if we were to transition from where we are today to a community hospital. We're looking for any additional members who want to work on this idea. I think it's a concrete way of thinking about how we go from the situation that we're in now to something that might be a future for a hospital in this district, or in our towns. Our next meeting is going to be next Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. We're going to start working on our ideas about how we would go from where we are today, which is a private, not-for-profit organization of St. Andrews, to a community-based hospital. Now, you can imagine that's not going to necessarily be all fun. It's not going to necessarily be all easy. I'm not promising that we can get there, but it seems to me to be one alternative to just giving up and saying there's nothing we can do. So if you're interested in helping with that, we have some people that are going to start fanning out, I think, to some of the smaller hospitals, both the private and Mayo, the community hospital, to look at how they run, what information we might need, what questions we should be asking, and how we might start a transition plan moving forward from where we are to where that might be. So with that, I think I'm finished, Chuck, and if you have any questions, I can try to answer them. Yeah, Dan?
Meeting here?
We're meeting here, sorry, yeah, 9 o'clock next Tuesday night. Question,
How
Tom?
much cooperation or lack thereof would we get from present owners of the St. Andrews Hospital?
Well, there's a large question. The question was how much cooperation would there be between the present ownership and the movement towards such an organization? That's an unknown. We would hope that through presenting the idea of a community-run organization organized in roughly the way I talked about, that would be an attractive alternative to the I don't want to say the shutdown, but certainly the diminishment of what we have now. This presents the opposite possibility that we can create and maintain a hospital here. It is being done around the country and even in this state in small rural communities. It is not an impossibility. We have done it before at St. Andrews. It can't be done again, I think, but there's a hurdle. There are many hurdles. There are all sorts of questions.
What I was wondering is, would they cooperate at all, or would they simply say, we don't want to do it, we own St. Andrews Hospital, and that's it?
We are going to meet, and that's part of our purpose, is to look at how we approach the current ownership and how we deal with that, and we need to work with the task force, and there are many unknowns, but we would hope to have a productive discussion with them about this and see where this might go. I don't know the answer to your question, Tom. Can only proceed on the notion that, hey, we are dealt a deck of cards and there's one way to play this, or there may be other ways, but a community hospital might be an answer, and we'll have to go through step by step through a transition plan. And at some point, we could say, we can't get there. I don't know that. I'm not promising that I know how we can get there. I'm just saying, I think everyone in the community said we need to do something like this, and I'm willing to work together with people to see if that can happen.
I think we could get there fairly, not easily, but fairly easily, if we had the cooperation of the present owners, that they would be willing to consider a situation like this.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would. I don't know. I mean, are we going to end up with a situation, they run a hospital down here and we run a hospital down here?
I would be frank with you in saying I don't think that that's a viable option.
No.
After thinking about this since we were presented with this problem, 3 weeks ago now, or whenever it was, it seems to me that we've either got to get a friendly transition of that hospital into a community hospital, or we face a huge uphill fight in terms of the economics, in terms of the state licensing, in terms of competition for healthcare dollars down here in our peninsula. I don't think.
We'll probably never get a certificate of need on that.
Right. So he said we'd probably never get a certificate of need, which is a state license for a hospital. The ideal would be to continue, I guess, and I don't know how that would work, but continue with the existing certificate of need. But until I see the red light flashing that says we've got to stop at some intersection somewhere, I'm enthusiastically continuing down this path, because I know that there are small community hospitals in this country and in this state that are thriving. So the question is, if we want to plan for thriving small hospital, can we make that happen? As opposed to, I think, what happened in this situation where, well, I don't want to characterize it, but I do think that the priority was not to see how we could make St. Andrews thrive, but rather how could it become a smaller part of this larger organization, and it's resulted in the decision that we have before us now to close the ER. So we're going down a different path. Anybody who wants to go down it, come join us.
Stacy, has there been any discussion in Lincoln County Healthcare about support of Representative McDonald's plan, or not support, or any discussion at all?
There has been discussion about the fact that there are several subgroups, and I think Lincoln County has willingly said we would like to participate wherever we can participate. So
And can we-
there has not been specific discussion about any one particular one. So, I'm happy to join your
Okay.
task.
Let's do it, and let's see how we can organize what would be some sort of transition discussion. Open-ended, I realize, but that's what we need. Yes?
Could I ask if anybody speaks, they make it a little easier on John and Stan so that he can focus in on you? Yes.
And Amber's in the back taking notes too, so please just state your name.
If you could say your name.
I'm Maxine Turtloss. And do we know who owns St. Andrews?
I won't attempt to answer that question. We are asking that question in our group, and we are muddling towards an answer, shall I say? But
We have an
perhaps
answer.
Yeah.
The other day, well, I was gonna get this down the road, but we'll jump in here now. We asked the question when we met the other day with Lincoln County Healthcare, specifically asked the question, who owns St. Andrews? The first answer we got was kind of a long soliloquy regarding sole members and Maine Health and Lincoln County Healthcare. At the end of the day, St. Andrews owns St. Andrews.
The corporation is
Corporation.
Yes. Corporation and its trustees own St. Andrews.
There is a deed on record from.
Let me
from the
finish, Tom.
Gregories
Let me
to St.
finish.
Andrews.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
The issue then becomes that the trustees of St. Andrews are in fact the exact same trustees of Lincoln County Healthcare. And so that obviously becomes, well, it's an issue as to who is speaking for St. Andrews. Well, yeah.
How are the trustees selected?
They are, we've been down this road before, but we'll go down it again. It is a self-perpetuating board. When they lose a member, they nominate a member from, amongst themselves to bring someone else in, and they join the board. Is that accurate? Yes. So the bottom line is St. Andrews owns St. Andrews, but it is managed by its trustees.
So what our task will be, if I don't want to interrupt, Smith.
Jump.
You're done. But the task would be for our community hospital group to work with the board of St. Andrews as the board of St. Andrews and get them to separate out from their responsibilities, their Lincoln County or their Maine Health responsibilities, and we need to talk with them as the board of St. Andrews. Is that humanly possible? When somebody owns, has 3 positions or whatever going on in their lives, but that's what we have to do, so that's what we're going to do.
Well, I think that's going to be a difficult task to divorce the same people from their own organization, but,
Either we start down this path or we just say, we give up and we're
Right. No,
I'll go home. Yeah.
But I think it's a difficult task, but I think it's something we have to try. For looking out for the best interest of St. Andrews. It's my feeling that, you have the same board members sitting on, the same individuals sitting on all these boards. Who are they most looking out for? Is it and I think it's the entity as a whole, where St. Andrews is just a piece of it. And I think we got to change the mindset to make it look like we're looking at St. Andrews as the piece, as our whole.
That's right.
So we've got to make that kind of transition.
I believe the piece that the community hospital group is looking at is St. Andrews, as a community resource for this peninsula. And that's the discussion, we have to have that, that's a discussion we have to have.
That's one of the discussions. The other discussion we're still trying to have is, can we get Lincoln County Healthcare to pivot and change their mind and keep our status quo? I mean, that's certainly an option, and if we did that, then your efforts at that point would become unnecessary.
That's correct, and I'd be glad to have them be unnecessary.
So Bruce, you guys are meeting again
Next Tuesday morning,
at
9 o'clock,
a.m.
right here.
Okay,
And-
and you'll give us an update next Tuesday night?
Yep, we'll do.
I appreciate that, Bruce, thank you.
Well,
Ma'am?
I'm Carol Burrow, and I just want to know if regardless.
Could you
of-
stand up? Thank you.
Regardless of whether or not it may, the things continue as they are, is it in black and white somewhere that these boards must be the same people on every single board? Or can these people say, we don't want to compromise our ethics by trying to say we want St. Andrews to stay in our entity, or become independent and have new members? I mean, is it cast in stone somewhere that they must be these same people?
I believe Jim has been asking for that kind of information. I'm not sure we've actually received any of that information.
Can you shed some light on that, Jim?
This is, I had put this later in our discussion, but we've asked for the organizational structure documents from Lincoln County Healthcare, and we haven't received them yet. But in order to kind of get a better view of how we understand the three different organizations to be structured, we need to understand how they're put together. And we've asked Lincoln County Healthcare for these documents, and I guess we're at an impasse right now.
Well, it depends on what we're asking for, honestly. So, Stacy Miller, Vice President of Physician Services for Lincoln County Healthcare. So Jim's right, we have been having a conversation back and forth about what documents do you need, what information are you trying to get? There's all kinds of documents, so until we get that figured out, and I have to ask permission for it, I'm not sure what we can release. But we're willing to work, as we said, for the task force, and what we can release, we'll release, and what I can't release, I won't release, so.
So an organizational chart is a major issue for us to
No,
get?
we gave the
We have a chart.
organizational chart.
Okay.
We have an org chart, but
But what I don't have access to, for instance, are bylaws, so I don't physically have access to those. In order for me to get those, I have to go to legal counsel. So we sent the ask out to legal
Are you on
counsel.
the board?
No, I'm not on the board,
Oh. Okay.
no.
On
So
any board?
I'm a vice president.
You're a vice
I'm
president?
a
and
vice
you don't
president,
have-
I'm not part of the board,
Okay.
okay?
I just find it odd that, being a vice president, you wouldn't have access to bylaws.
I don't have access to bylaws, I don't have access to medical staff bylaws, I don't have access to lots of info. I don't have access to board minutes. I mean,
Wow.
that stuff is confidential information.
Is there-
So, at any rate, I mean, we are working with Jim and the task force to release information, and what we can release, we will release, and when we come to agreement on what it is we're trying to do, then we'll have some sort of.
is there a policy that dictates that the control of the publicity of board minutes, members, and the organizational documents? Is there a policy that states that
I'm not
these
sure
are
if there's
confidential?
a policy or not, but there's confidential information within each organization. So board minutes, we probably would not release board minutes. They have patient information in them, we wouldn't release them. Is there a policy about that? I'm sure if we looked on, confidential information, there's a policy that tells you what you can or cannot release. So we're not trying to not give information, we're trying to give everything that we can. And when I have to ask permission for it, I go and ask permission for it. So that's what we've done, that's the information that we sent to you today. We have to ask, we have the ask out, we're happy to give you whatever we can give you. And if we can't, we're happy to give you legal counsel to talk to. So,
So you can strike out patient information, we'll take the rest.
Yeah,
well,
we can.
if you looked at our board minutes, you would say that is a very time-consuming task to do, to black out.
We understand time.
Yep.
That's all, that refers to peer review.
You keep control.
Okay. Pam, you had a question?
Well, I'm just wondering if you can't speak for the board, why don't we have a board member here?
Well, we talked about that, right? So I'm assuming that you guys are going to update the crowd
We are.
on the results of our meeting. And I'm thinking that, well, depends on what you
That will
say
be
about that
answered.
meeting. Huh?
That will be answered?
I'm assuming that part of that will be answered yes.
Well, we had a really good meeting last Wednesday, but I'm not sure the results is how I would.
Well, we did specifically talk about who would be at meetings, whose position it is to be at meetings. I mean, we talked about all of that, right?
That was dictated. I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, we did say that the board's opinions is valuable to the community.
Right, and I think what was said at that meeting was carrying out the transition of the recommendations that have been made are management's responsibilities, and that board members aren't usually there. We did give the task force, full access to the executive committee of the board, gave the opportunity to ask them all kinds of questions. We also offered more time with the board, should you need it.
You did.
So,
You
I'm
did.
assuming you guys are going to talk about that.
Marie?
Marie Schnell here, and I'm safe in assuming that the lawyer that we have engaged would be allowed to request anything that you don't want to give? Thank you very much.
Sir?
My name is Tom Hagan. It seems to me it's a major waste of time to assume that the information that we need is available from the organization that we're dealing with. The real question, it seems to me, is what is the basis under which the St. Andrew's Hospital exists? And it exists as a consequence of something that happened at the state level. There's some sort of a state authorization for the formation of the not-for-profit St. Andrew's Hospital, it seems to me. So I think that it would make more sense to get from the state whatever the charter is under which St. Andrews currently exists.
That's what I would like to see. I'd like to see charter documents and bylaws that gives us structure so that we can understand how decisions are made at their organization.
Tom, we're trying to get there. We're trying to get there. These questions are being asked. Bruce?
If you need a state charter document for St. Andrews, I can get that probably within 24 hours, if you need that.
Outstanding.
The bylaws, it sounds, I mean, here's a significant difference. The bylaws for community hospital in Milo, the Mayo Hospital, I've got them and they're available to everybody, but it sounds like with Lincoln County Healthcare, we've got to open up the bank vault or something to get them.
Well, that's my point, is that it's a mistake to, I think we're mistakenly beating on Lincoln County Healthcare for documents that we'd more
We can get
easily
the
get from
charter,
the state.
I don't know about anything else.
No, we'd appreciate that help getting the documents.
I'd like to read just, by the way, there is a tremendous amount of confusion on this whole subject, in my opinion. And I'd like to read a history of the Maine Health story from an address delivered by James F. Orr III, who served as the first president of the Maine Health Board of Trustees from 1999 to 2009. And at the first annual leadership dinner, he had a short thing where he's talking about the history, and he says, they could decide to work with each other. These are the hospitals, the independent hospitals that existed. Or for survival by all-out competition with other hospitals, or they could decide to work with other not-for-profit, community-owned hospitals to see that the best care was made available to their communities. So here is the chairman of the Board of Trustees who thinks that the hospitals that they're talking about, which would include St. Andrews, one of the earliest participants, was a, quote, community-owned hospital. It's not. That's the real point. It's not a community-owned hospital, whereas the thing that Bruce McDonald is proposing is a hospital that would be, quote, community-owned.
I'm willing to bet that the gentleman that you just quoted had one vision while he was on the board, and that the board of today has a totally different vision on where they want to go.
But the real question is, in my opinion, who owns the hospital? And he was of the opinion, as are many people on the peninsula, and as they have all along, assumed that somehow or other this was a community-owned hospital.
And it's not.
And it's not.
But I understand your point, because there's a distinction that that they are a 501c3 organization. Actually, there are three 501c3 organizations. The purpose of a 501c3 and the reason why they're tax exempt is because they actually maintain some community benefit. And that's what my argument was to Lincoln County Healthcare on why we need to see the structured documents, is because we need to make sure that the trustees of this community benefit are representing the community interest. We'd like to see them.
I think it's evident that they don't.
And until I see the documents, I don't really, we're fishing.
All you need to see is the crowd that was in the gym a couple of weeks ago.
Sir?
Yeah, Mike Lowy. Talking about the charter, and I could be completely incorrect, but in the case of a nonprofit where you're probably filing your federal income taxes under a Form 990 and that sort of thing, but in the process of getting that 501c3 or whatever it is, that thing, you have to file the bylaws of your organization, so it is in the public record. I'm an officer in a small charitable outfit here in town, and by God, you've got our bylaws that had to be submitted, and in fact were challenged 15 years ago by the IRS for not having certain things. So it's got to be on file in the public records somewhere anyway.
Some of the things that the IRS makes you maintain to have your 501c3 would be like governance structure for transparency and accountability and conflict of interest policies and stuff like that.
Right, that's exactly what I'm talking about, because they have to be comfortable that in fact it is a nonprofit. You got to prove it.
Thank
And I
you.
would assume it's also possibly on file with the state in terms of part of the charter. I don't know though.
It'd be much easier if Lincoln County Healthcare just gave them to us.
You know, I would like to say one thing. The ask specifically for the bylaws and the conversation happened today. So you are kind of making it seem like there's this massive pushback. And I'm not really sure that that's how the conversation went between you and I today. And we had it over email. And I think what I said was, let's talk about it when I get here tonight. So I think it's you're leading people down the wrong path.
The last Wednesday we talked about it.
Actually, we didn't. We got clarification from you today. We sent you an email on Friday saying this, we think we provided you with everything, please let us know. We did not hear back from you until today. We heard back from you today, and you asked, and I said, I'm not sure what we can give you. I'm not sure what you're looking to try to figure out. Let's get together and talk about it. I'm pretty sure that's what the email said.
Last Wednesday I said
So-
bylaws is something that we needed, organization.
And I said that we would be able to talk about it. So to make this out as if we are against one another is really a very unfair statement from my perspective.
I'm just
Well, now it's clear what we're asking for, and Jim will wait for a response.
Right.
Is there any more public comment before we move on to the reports? Seeing none. Jim?
I didn't have time to put the discussion that we had with Lincoln County Healthcare on September 5th into any formal, so all I have is my notes. And I thought between all of us, we could kind of report back to the public how that discussion went. But I took a lot of notes.
Could you say who you met with, Jim?
Yes, but once again, we're going through my scribbles, but Stacy Miller was there, the entire task force was there, and can you help me if I get the names wrong, because I just jotted them down quickly. Russ Mack,
Right?
Pete Mundy, Pat Liddell,
Lyden,
Leiden, Mark Fourier,
Foray,
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 Westcott Schott, Jim Donovan,
Scott Shot.
Scott, Jeff Curtis, and Wayne Prenti. So, I mean, it was
Cindy Levitt
Cindy
was there.
Levin.
Cindy Levitt was there.
I didn't write down Cindy
No,
because I knew she was there.
Bill Logan was there.
Bill Logan.
Bill Logan was there. What else did I have?
So,
So can I clarify, it was the Lincoln County Healthcare Board Executive
It was the
Committee,
executive committee.
and it was some complement of the leadership team of
Right.
Lincoln County Healthcare.
Yep.
And the reason all of them weren't there was because there was very little time to plan in order to get everybody there.
I think it was a very fair representation of Lincoln County healthcare. I think that's very easy to say, that we had a very fair representation that day.
It was about a 2.5-hour meeting. It took quite a while. There was a pretty good dialogue back and forth. Every single one of the questions that we posed, we got some semblance of an answer. And then one of the questions that we did pose was the information exchange, which led to us discussing. One of the things that came up was why the 9-month execution date. Jim Donovan led us through that discussion of regulatory issues, licensing issues, operation issues that they have to accomplish in that 9-month time span. Probably the best to summarize, and I keep butchering his name, Dr.
Mark Foray.
Foray. It was probably the best asset in the meeting, where he gave us a medical perspective on why it's difficult to run a small hospital. One of the spin-off items that we had from the meeting is that the task force respected his outlook so much that we're going to do an interview in which Channel 7 and Stacy and I are putting together of Dr. Foray's kind of outlook, in which we'll ask him a lot of questions so that he can get his opinion out to the 7,000 people on the peninsula, because we thought that was a very important perspective.
And if I could just interrupt there, when that's on, you want to encourage as many people as you can to watch this. This man is measured, he's clear on his message. There can be some disagreements, but the man is very clear and very succinct about what he's saying regarding keeping St. Andrews open from a medical point of view. And it's an information that people need to hear. And I really encourage as many people as possible to watch that once it's put on, because I think it's very informative. Now, does it decide this question definitively? It certainly does not. But it certainly puts the picture into a different perspective for, I think, a lot of people.
It gives his perspective from the clinical aspect.
Yep. Sorry.
No, I actually want you guys to jump in as much as because I really am operating off the scribble notes that I have from the meeting. One of the things that I would like us to do tonight, or at least a start, is to address what questions the task force and the public would like to see answered by the doctor. I can put together what I think is a good list of questions and probably conduct a halfway decent interview, but I want to have the questions that are pretty paramount to be asked answered during that session. And understanding that there are probably more questions than we could possibly ask in a decent sized interview. We don't want to make it snooze television for Channel 7. So even if we don't address those questions in tonight's meeting, that should be one of our action items, is to have some electronic dialogue and invite the public to say, these are questions I don't think we've answered from a medical perspective. Remember, we're not going to get into the finances or the community benefit. We're just medically talking to the emergency room director.
Although I think you could ask him questions about anything. He's administrative as well as clinical. He was part of every discussion, so I think it's fair to ask him.
And certainly some of our interaction with him the other day was financial, no
Absolutely.
question.
So, and he's not going to see the questions in advance. So I think it's fair to ask him anything. If he can't answer it, he'll defer.
If there was anything that the doctor showed is that he was able to, he's very knowledgeable on the subject and he could answer most questions without referring to any notes. I mean, he knows the issue very well. A couple of questions that I think were on the tip of the tongue of the task force that we put together was first of all, if the decision by Lincoln County Healthcare to dispose of the services could be reversed, and that was a pretty clear and transparent no, that they've weighed their decision heavily, and that the answer is no, that they will not be reversed. The second question was, we had requested 6 more months before the execution of this. There was a lot of dialogue about why that would be difficult, and I'm not sure if we nailed down whether that is answered or not.
Well, Jim Duggan said no.
I mean, Jim said no, but
I think what he said was that we have every reason to believe that we can execute this transformation in the 6 months that we have left, or 7 months that we have left. But if during our planning there is a reason or something happens unforeseen that we didn't plan on, then we are flexible enough to not say that's the drop dead date. That's all there is.
Probably not your best terminology.
Sorry.
Just saying.
I'm glad you said so the point is that we have begun planning. We intend, our goal is for April 1st. And should we encounter something that would make that not possible, then we're flexible enough to make that happen.
Probably one of the things that I wrote down in my notes 1,000 times is that Lincoln County Healthcare's biggest concern is that they haven't had the volume numbers to support their business. There was a tremendous amount of discussion. We go back and forth in my notes over the fact that this is mostly about volume.
I have a volume underlined like 8 times.
Right. Mr. Climo did ask, the one thing that's hard for people to get by is what is the monetary difference between success at St. Andrew's Hospital and these change in services. We never really did nail down that discussion because that there's a lot of discussion of quality care and what does that cost. So we never did nail that down.
In fact, I would go so far as to say we didn't even come close to nailing that down. And it remains, to me, one of the paramount questions that we've got to try to find a way to get a definitive answer from a financial point of view, what we're talking about. And right now, I'm not real confident how that's going to be resolved. I'm not sure it is. But I interrupted again, I'm sorry.
No, I need you guys on this one. Do you want me to continue on?
Yes.
The famous question, who owns St. Andrew's Hospital? Jim Donovan led us through that discussion. It's a charitable asset of St. Andrew's as a 501c3.
But we did finally go back to that question because I wasn't quite satisfied with Jim's answer, and we got back to St. Andrews own St. Andrews.
Yeah, Bill Logan. What?
Bill Logan.
Oh, Bill Logan actually set up and said St. Andrews owns St. Andrews.
And then there was a tremendous amount of dialogue about what both sides see as the critical junction is the fact that the public is trying to get their arms around these changes that are happening, and how do we succumb that? One of the things that we discussed was the doctor's interview is going to bring some light to some very important issues that the public needs to come to grasp to. That St. Andrews Hospital, whether they stayed open or whether they closed down these services, has some real obstacles that they need to get past, and that the community needs to be aware of those.
What are the obstacles?
Well, you know, and like Smith and Jim have said, I mean, I had the same thing, it's volume. And what were the characteristics that were affecting that volume? And the fact that certain procedures aren't done there anymore affects the volume of everything else. And
You
that's
take out all
where,
the procedures, there's not gonna be any volume.
exactly. That's right. So, you know, once you start removing certain procedures, it affects everything else. And it all came back to that. And I gotta say, I was impressed with the doctor, with Mark, the doctor, Foray. I keep forgetting his last name. I think he puts a lot of good light on their position and what, clinically, he's right on point. But I think you gotta look at what he's saying about what's happening, you know, and those volume questions, you know, to me were enhanced by what he was
Well,
saying.
did anybody ask him what the operating results of St. Andrews for the last 5 years are? In other words, St. Andrews Hospital, as a hospital, is it losing money or is it making money? It's my understanding that it's a possibility that it actually was in the black in several of the last years.
The
Now,
last
of
2 years,
course-
it's been in the black.
Yeah. Now,
But
if you
they will
take-
tell you that there are extenuating circumstances to that, in as much as there have been long-time payments that were not given to the hospital by state through Medicaid, right? When Governor LePage came in, he actually went back and paid back
Yeah.
hospitals monies that they had not been paid, and that put them into the black. Their position is that they would still be operating in the red if they hadn't received those monies, but the argument, of course, then becomes, well, if you've been getting them all along, perhaps you would not have been in the red those other years, and that's to be argued about at this point. But I think it's best at this point, let us finish this before we go back into public discussion. Let us finish this process. I know people want to ask questions, but
That's a quick summary of the topics that we discussed, but I honestly do think that the dialogue was constructive. The answers were,
not terribly surprising.
they weren't terribly surprising. They weren't satisfactory, but they were expected answers. We do appreciate the executive, appreciate the Lincoln County executives for their time. And we do appreciate the perspective, especially Dr. Foray. I'm getting better. I bet he
Well,
can't say
Smith
more.
has a good way to.
Yeah, it's just 4A.
It's written in my notes.
4A. It's easy.
Very good.
I'm sympathetic with people that butcher last names.
Try first names.
But I think that's a summary, and if the task force wants to add to that,
The only thing I would add, that a question that I asked is how much of this is being driven by the Affordable Care Act? And there was much discussion, but at the end of the day, one of the words that came out that stuck with me was profound, that it's profound how much this is being driven by that it is something that all of us, as we go forward, no matter what happens with this situation, we have to start being cognizant of how this major piece of legislation is impacting us and how it's impacting these people at their level. And it is, it stuck with me, profound. It's something that this is going to be ongoing for the foreseeable future for all of us in America, and certainly in the state of Maine, and certainly here on this peninsula. So that was one of the questions that I was glad I got an answer to. I would like to go back to one thing that we asked, and again, is about the money. And we just simply haven't gotten an answer. And I don't know if we can get an answer, or if they're willing to give us an answer. I don't know which it is. They talk about how complex it is, and I get that. But at some level, if you're gonna do what you're talking about doing, we need an answer to that question. There's gotta be some, and I don't know whether, you know, we're talking 4 million or 400 million or 4 billion. But there is a number out there, and we've gotta find out what that is. The only other thing I'd like to put out is I want you folks to know, and out there to know, they did come to the table. They were very open. There was a good discussion. I agree with, I don't think we got any surprising answers. We got what we kind of expected. But at least there was a dialogue for the first time, and it was good. And I'm hoping we can keep that moving forward. But as far as how things went with Lincoln County, that's how I see things.
I can say for myself, I know at the last meeting, Mr. Donovan was here. Unfortunately, I don't see him tonight.
Yeah.
No, we have a medical staff meeting, regularly scheduled medical staff meeting, so it was truly divide and conquer who's going to what meeting tonight, so
Okay. I do hope that he comes to more of the
I'm
meetings.
sure he will be here.
There is one other thing I'd like to put out. When Peter Monday, who is the chair of the board, did say at one point that the board would be open to entertain a change in the timing of when this closing happened. Now, whether or not that will go further down the road when the board gets together with the executive committees, et cetera, I don't know. But at least there's a glimmer of a hope that we might be able to get this beyond April, but I think it's a glimmer.
But I think you did state that management's recommendations weigh strongly.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But they also said, did they not, that there was no chance of reversing the decision? So what difference does it make?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I think there is a difference. I mean, my opinion, this isn't the task force opinion, is that the community needs a little bit more time to figure out the impacts. I know that the ambulance service has been putting in some time trying to figure out how they prepare for April. More time would certainly give them more time to prepare.
Yeah, we have infrastructure issues too. I mean, I know up in Edgecombe, we got 2 roads we closed down last year in the middle of the winter, and that means no ambulance is gonna get through. So we have infrastructure issues we have to deal with, and with the way the fiscal year lies, we weren't notified of this before we've already made our budgets for this year, and so we're in a tight spot, so.
I think it's pretty ironic. It was like the day after our first task force meeting, Route 27 was blocked for a reason. And I was just like, that's great.
Bruce, you had a quick comment?
Yeah, I expressed a concern to Jim this morning in our meeting about the interview with Dr. Foray, because if his view becomes the medical rationale for why an ER can't work here, I think that it's a foregone conclusion that he's gone through that process in the context of the Maine Healthcare, Lincoln County Healthcare plan. And I don't think their plan was to say, they did not task him or anyone with the task of looking at how could St. Andrews be restored to health. They had a different perspective. I'm not saying it was bad. They just didn't.
I actually asked him that question.
They did not have that perspective. They were not planning to keep St. Andrews robust and open. So when you ask, in life, when you ask questions a certain way, then you get certain answers. So, or when you go at a task a certain way, you can make the answer come out the way you want it. If he had been tasked to say, how could we keep an ER here? What would need to happen at St. Andrews?
Well, I asked him that question the other day. I asked him that question. Bruce, let me say, I asked him specifically that question.
Yeah.
And his answer, and I certainly don't want to speak completely for him because he's much more proficient at it than I am, but is that the expense of keeping an operating ER that is going to be safe and effective for people is the cost is prohibitive because of the people you have to keep on, so that no matter what emergency walks through that door, whether it's a sick baby or whether it's somebody having a heart attack or someone having a brain aneurysm, these are all different things, and not every doc is up to speed on all those things. So to have all the personnel you need to handle that is cost prohibitive. That's gonna be his, in a nutshell, his position. And not that that can't be addressed, because there are ways to address it. But I think that's what you're gonna find is,
And also, what I put out to him too was, we can deal with personnel issues. And almost every single one of them threw their hands up and, you know.
Well, if I might just add, I do hope that there will be an opportunity for a different point of view to be expressed on Channel 7 or somewhere. Not that I respect Mark Foray, I've met him, I know him, I've worked with him on legislative things, and I respect the people that have been part of this decision, which I still think is a bad decision. But we need to talk to emergency room people who are in small emergency rooms that do work, that are around, that do work, that have been made to work.
no argument. Absolutely.
And this answer that you will get from Dr. Foray cannot be taken as the final answer.
No, it can't be
And the
taken.
doctor encouraged us
Actually, didn't he offered to the task force any contact information for any of the emergency.
He encouraged us to talk to
I
as
wasn't
many,
there, so I didn't.
he encouraged us to talk to as many hospitals as we can, as many emergency rooms as we can. He offered
Well, that's what we're
to
going
put
to do.
us in touch with those people. Val, you had something.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yep.
I think it was pretty clear that the entire task force, I was too, was impressed with his perspective and thinks that the people need to hear it. Yeah, I'm not
Just from
saying
an
that,
educational point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna get information that this task force doesn't have the ability to give you.
Freddie?
What about speaking to the physicians that currently staff the emergency room?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're employees, and that puts them in a bad position to ask them to speak. It's sort of a double bind. I would think they would know better.
Stacy?
Well, I don't know, are you talking about the physicians?
Mhm.
So,
Who currently staff it.
Dr. Stand up. So Dr. Foray was the former medical director of the emergency department. It's now been replaced by Dr. Tim Fox, who I think some of you have seen. They had talked to the physicians. This was not a process that just Dr. Foray and the leadership team took on. The emergency department physicians have been intricately involved in these discussions. And what I think he would say, although I too do not want to speak on behalf of him, because as I said, he is truly an eloquent speaker. I think that you would hear the same thing from the emergency department as a whole. And I think he offered that up as well. And I think he also talked about what we have attempted to do in that emergency department over the past 5 or 6 years. He will, if you ask him the question about what services, did you bring to bear? How could we make this emergency department a successful emergency department? He would talk about the resources that have been brought into that emergency department over the past 5 years. And I think he said, he thought he could do it as the medical director and found that he just could not do it. So.
What I'd ask is if any of you have any questions that you'd like to see Jim ask Dr. Foray during the question and answer period that'll be on Channel 7, that you get them to Jim. Either drop them off here at the office, email him, or see him personally when he has a moment.
the interview is gonna be Friday, so there is a limited amount of time to put together the interview questions, and I'm gonna kind of try to restrain it to a reasonable amount of time, because I think if we drag it into such a long interview that it's not good TV, then it loses its effect.
Isn't it tomorrow?
Yeah,
Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday?
The 12th.
Oh, well, I have marked
Yeah.
on my calendar.
It's the 12th.
I'm sorry.
Well, John, what is it?
Today's the 11th.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's 12.
Tomorrow.
Don't be bitter, reconsider.
Yeah. Well, I still think we can pull it off. I think we have enough questions.
There's plenty of questions.
But I did mark it on my calendar, Ron. Thank you. That's all right.
I would add, also in the meeting, I think, I might be getting meetings mixed up, but I had some questions about where would the existing equipment go? And what about the equipment the auxiliary bought for the hospital, and what equipment is going to move over to Miles? And I've been getting some questions from Booth Bay Harbor residents about that, and do any of you remember
Yes,
exactly what the answer was?
the response was that any equipment that was purchased by the auxiliary specifically for St. Andrews would stay there. Anything that was under a lease program, which was not owned, has gone back and forth in the past and can go back and forth. But anything that specifically was bought for St. Andrews is staying at St. Andrews. They actually made example of a couple technical pieces which I didn't understand, but that are actually still at St. Andrews, even though they could use them at Miles because they were purchased for St. Andrews. They're staying at St. Andrews. So we were assured, and again, I take them at more than face value, that anything that has been bought for St. Andrews has stayed there and has not been taken away. There might be a comment back by Helen.
Helen Farm. I used to work at St. Andrews, and I know when we had people come into the ER, and I used to be stationed in there quite a bit, and I'm not an ER tech or anything like that. I was an anesthetic. But other doctors, other hospitals are a quick telephone away for giving you that expertise help, that if a physician over here may not know too much about this particular case that has come in via ambulance or walking or whatever, they called me Med, and when it was the old regional where I worked too, Mid-Coast, they called there and they said, we're sending you down because we can't, and we're sending an ambulance out now, or we're going to life flight this person out. Be expecting. They were there. And the sense of not being able to care for people. If you're a doctor, you take that oath. And that oath is to do the best of your ability. I'm not doing it correct. But you are there to help and heal people. And as far as that goes, the ambulance people do a real good job. But I do know, we used to have phone calls after phone calls. And like I said, I put my life on the line over here. And I wholeheartedly believe in them. And I know there's other people in this room that's done the same thing.
No argument.
Thank you.
Jim, do you have anything else on the meeting?
No, I'm done with the meeting.
Could I ask one question about the meeting? Did you ever get the sense in the meeting that April 1st was the definite time that it would close, but is there a possibility that they may shut down before that time?
No.
They're absolutely going
No,
to
I
keep
did.
it open?
You asked if I got that feeling. I certainly did not get any inclination that that was their goal at any level.
I question whether it can be pulled off successfully by April 1st, so I don't think it can be done sooner.
When St. Andrews closes, will we also lose the palliative care and the rehabilitation units?
Yeah. I think that's
Stacy?
the best question for you.
The swing beds will no longer be utilized, so the beds in St. Andrews will no longer be utilized. But rehab, we have a strong, vibrant PT, OT, I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, but that all remains. So what will not remain is the emergency department will be less than 24 hours, it'll be an urgent care center, and the inpatient unit will not be accepting patients or staff.
So in other words, if somebody is sick unto death, he'll have to die up at somewhere else, out of town.
There will be no beds available at St. Andrews.
Just call my call.
That's a sin.
Yeah, no hospice.
No hospice, no nothing.
I don't think there was hospice. But it wasn't classified as hospice care.
It's not an inpatient hospice unit.
Good questions to Dr. Fourier.
Yes.
Actually,
I'm Peggy Pinkham. Seniors never had the designation of hospice. What we did was we used our swing bed program, our skilled beds, and we called it a palliative care program or an end of life. It was like a hospice program, but we couldn't use the word hospice because there are certain things that are required for you to have a certified hospice program. But all the staff went through the training. We just called it a palliative care program, end of life.
Thank you, Peg.
Yeah, sorry if I'm confused on terminology.
I'd like to add to the concerns that Dr.
Could you stand up?
that
For the camera. Thank
Dr. Foray will be the sole representative on television, and I want to I want to refer people to the woman doctor, Dr. Rose something, who spoke down at the high school 4 weeks ago.
Dr. Judy Stone.
Judy Stone.
Judy Stone. Well, I
Yeah.
was totally wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, her point was that anything you hear from the current administration, whether it's medical or otherwise, should be looked at with considerable skepticism. Which means that it seems to me that somebody like her, or the other doctor that was sitting, the other woman doctor that was sitting here 2 weeks ago, needs to be heard from.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only thing I would say is that I have no question in my mind that Mark Fourier cares about patients. I have no doubt in my heart about that. And what I do truly believe is that for everyone, what we heard, you deserve to hear. Because should you take it with a grain of salt? I certainly did, but it was still very instructive, very informative, and it gives you an idea of the position that these people are working from. And that is informative in and of itself. It gives you a chance to understand what they're basing their decisions on. Now, we can disagree with their decisions, and we can continue to move forward. But as I've said from Jump Street, speaking for myself, we have to, as a public, be open to the idea that there's a possibility they're right. You have to keep that open. If we want them to have an open mind, to turn and pivot and go back to what we have, then we have to have an open mind that they might be right. You've got to consider that, people, or you're not being fair to yourselves or to them or to anybody. So, by all means, when you listen to Dr. Fourier, have a grain of salt. Foray. Thank you, brother. But listen to what the man has to say, because it's going to be informative.
Well, I would also say that Lincoln County Healthcare asked the task force, who do you want? You know, I mean, it could be anybody, and we could do it again, or, so.
It was the
we
task
left it
force
up-
idea to
Yeah, we
have
left it up to the task force.
the interview
as
with
to
Dr.
who-
Ford.
Wow.
Bruce, then the lady, and then
Could I just
last Jim
suggest
move
that
on.
the situation calls for an alternative voice, that Dr. Foray, much as we respect him, is a part of that organization that
Yes,
came
he
to
is.
this decision. So to make it believable to the people that there's some argument there, as Smith eloquently argues we should do, is to look at their side, and I agree we should. But we need the other side too. And I believe there are many examples that exist of other small hospital organizations that are thriving today. And if they had wanted to go in that direction, they could have gone in that direction. But we need to have some voices that tell us what that's like. And that's what we're doing.
And we're going to keep digging for that. There's no question.
Well, let's get them on Channel 7 so the 7,000 folks or whatever that look on Channel 7 can also see that feed. That's what I'm urging the task force.
Different.
Or maybe we can come up with someone and give you some recommendations.
Ma'am?
Well, I'm seconding that opinion. I think what we should do is have Dr. Foray's presentation be the first in a series. And I think
Certainly
the
a-
series should consist of interviews with ER staff in small rural hospitals that are like what we're trying to do, so that we can see alternative points of view.
Amen. All in favor of
But
it.
it's,
Things keep going through my mind. I just want to remind everyone that April's only, what, 5 months away? So, time is of the essence in everything we do.
My name is Alan Lewis, and I've learned tonight that we have representatives from St. Andrews on the board. And I think we should be working with them, and they should be brought in and reminded of the things that we hold as questions. They also should be reprimanded a little bit, because I don't think they represented us very well on that board. But I think we should ask them to help us extend the period of time to drop us from the Lincoln County Health and some of the other questions that you have. I think you should ask those representatives to go to the board and represent us.
Well, the issue with that, though, is all the members on that board are the same members on Lincoln County Health. So they're all the same players.
But we have St. Andrews Board as part of that major board.
They're the same people.
They're
the same people.
No, not all of them.
Yes.
No, there's representatives from the other hospitals, aren't there?
No.
They're all the same people.
They all came from Booth Bay?
No, there's some from what he's saying, there's some from Miles as well. Miles is represented.
I'm saying.
Oh, the subset. There's a subset. Oh, gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Take that subset and bring them in and charge them with the questions that we have. And also remind them that they didn't represent us very well on that board.
Dr. Foray is a board member, right? So, I mean, he isn't giving us a board perspective, even though it is a single.
Is he a St. Andrews board member?
Yes.
He's a St. Andrews board member, he's a Lincoln County board member.
It would be helpful if we had. It would be helpful if we had the names of these people, I think, and get an idea so you can see what are the names of the people on the Lincoln Healthcare Board. It's the same names on the St. Andrews Board. It's the same exact names on the Miles Board. Some of those people live in Booth Bay. Some of those people live in Damariscotta. There's no minimum for how many people live in Booth Bay. There's no minimum for how many people live in Damariscotta, and they don't see themselves as only representing St. Andrews or only representing Miles. They see themselves as representing Lincoln County healthcare as a whole, or healthcare in Lincoln County as a whole. And at this point right now, they've told us more people in Booth Bay, more people that have their residences in Booth Bay on the board than people who live in Damariscotta on the board. But it doesn't matter where they have their home, they are all
They
looking
weren't
at the
chosen
same
because
thing.
they lived in Booth Bay.
But
Right.
I believe, and I may be wrong, and there are some people in this room who know this better than I, but there is something called the St. Andrews Corporation that received the property from the Gregory family back when. There is a corporation called St. Andrews Corporation, I believe. That will be clarified, I guess, with any charter documents. And somebody is on that board. Now, I don't know if all those other people that you mentioned are also on that board
Same board.
that
Same board.
manages the St. Andrews Corporation, but it's that board that, sitting as the St. Andrews Corporation board, that we need to talk to.
Same board.
Whatever it is, we need to talk to that board with that perspective of St. Andrews in mind, not anything
Well,
else.
and that's the issue. It goes back to something Valerie had said a couple meetings ago, that, what's the best outlook for St. Andrews? I think they're looking at it as what's the best outlook for the whole organization, not just St. Andrews. But that's where we're trying to go, Bruce. But the trying to get them to divorce themselves from the whole organization and just look at St. Andrews in particular, I think, is difficult.
The very first meeting we had at St. Andrews, when this thing all broke, Jim Donovan was very clear that the board represents Lincoln County, not Booth Bay or Booth Bay Harbor or Dan. They represent Lincoln County. And that's their perspective, and that's where they're operating from.
If your legal people can look at, who is that, what's the corporation, what's the corporation that owns St. Andrews?
Believe me, we're working on it.
And we want to talk to those people, whoever they are.
Jim, can you take us to legal?
Yes. Now, obviously, without clarity, and his hand has been up a long time, I'm sorry, I have to point it out.
Rick?
I'm Rick Hollis, resident of Blue Bay. I have been listening to this discussion for a period of time now, and I respect Dr. Ford. I also think he's a very eloquent spokesman. And I think that allowing him to have this initial interview in such a short period of time is going to sway opinion, perhaps in a manner that it should not be. Also, I think another point that has not been brought forth here is that this board is composed of a significant amount of paid employees of Lincoln County Healthcare. They are not trustees, in my opinion. The board, not-for-profit boards that I've served on, we were not paid by the organization other than perhaps a fee in a corporate sense for attending the board meeting. But I was not a paid employee of that organization, just like Stacy is not a paid employee is working for Lincoln County Healthcare is on the board. Now you got a bunch of board members that are paid employees, so obviously their perspective is going to be very swayed toward the perspectives that that organization wants shown forth. And I think we're going down the wrong path. I think, as Bruce says here, we need a good person to be able to speak the other perspective, just as well as Dr. Ford.
All in favor of it.
Speaker. And all of you have said how much you've been impressed by his techniques. He's great, and he knows his subject. And there are other people that know it just as well to have him number one, and then perhaps not see other people be given the same opportunity is a bad decision. My perspective. Thank you.
Prudy?
Prudy Frederick, St. Andrews Village resident. Last week, Mr. William Printy, Chief Financial Officer of Lincoln County Health, addressed us. He said, "You will know who owns the hospital. St. Andrews Hospital Corporation owns the hospital, which is owned by Lincoln County Healthcare."
No, managed by.
That's what he said.
He said,
Yes.
which is owned by Lincoln County.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Well,
Managed by.
managed by.
The information we got, or at least what I got out of the meeting last Wednesday was St. Andrews owns St. Andrews. That corporation owns St. Andrews. Just so happens that everyone on the board of that corporation is also on the board of Lincoln County Healthcare and the other organizations. But that was the answer that I got, that St. Andrews owns St. Andrews.
Well, it keeps falling back to the sole member
What is the
issue, which Jim went off in his little
I'm sorry.
diatribe about the sole member. They
Right.
stressed,
What does sole member mean?
So,
How do you
I
spell
don't
that?
know.
well, so
Stacy?
in a not-for-profit world, so I might get the terminology wrong, but she's right. St. Andrews Hospital is owned by the corporation called St. Andrews. I think that it's called, although I don't know for sure, St. Andrews Hospital and Healthcare.
It is.
Right? I think that's what it is. That has a parent. The parent is Lincoln County Healthcare. That too has a parent, which is Maine Health. And so when we talk about, well, does Maine Health own it? Maine Health is the sole member of Lincoln County Healthcare. And Lincoln County Healthcare is then in turn, I believe, the sole member of St. Andrews Hospital, Mass Memorial Hospital, et cetera. They each have their own corporations, but that's sort of how it works.
Well, we can ask Julius to,
The legal counsel can sort all of that out for all of us, really.
I own my business. My business owns material, so although the material is owned by my business, I own my business. That's kind of what you're saying. So.
Bruce?
Well, to maybe, I don't know if I can clarify, and I'm not legally able to answer the question, but it's sort of like a business is run out of a physical plant. And sometimes people sell the business, but they don't sell the physical plant. There are two separate entities here. There's the physical plant down there that is owned by the St. Andrews Corporation.
That's the asset.
But I believe the assets. But I believe what they did was they ceded out the management of the business to Lincoln County Healthcare,
Correct.
which ceded out their management to Maine Health. So Maine Health, as far as I can tell, never, or Lincoln County Healthcare, never paid $1 for anything down there. That land was, and those assets were ceded by the Gregory family to St. Andrews Corporation, which owns it, which owns those assets. I believe that's the case. And in the case of, say, this community hospital idea that we're pursuing, we're not looking to own that. We're looking to manage the business while St. Andrews the corporation continues to own that asset. We'd like them to turn over the management of the hospital business that goes on there to the community. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to take over that asset. So that's, to me, a similar situation in which exists today. They, for good reasons, back in the 90s, ceded control of their business over to Lincoln County Healthcare. They ceded control of their business, but they did not transfer the property. And then Lincoln County Healthcare then further ceded control of their business, or part of it, to Maine Health. That's where that comes from. And I realize there's some other things called sole proprietor and stuff that I don't understand that get all in the mix there, but I think St. Andrews Corporation owns the hospital. We need to talk with them about letting them cede the business operation over to a community-based operation instead of the private for-profit that's been going on. That's where we are at, I think.
Jim?
No, I understand where Chuck's pointing us, because we said we wanted to keep these meetings under 2 hours, and we digress sometimes. There's information that we need, and that's in our reports. The legal report is summarized. We've already discussed the task force went into executive session to look over what legal has proposed to us right now is a very wide range picture of all the avenues that are proposed to the task force. I guess I understand my marching orders, and I'll carry them on. That's about all we can do for legal report. We'll continue on. There's not much to report publicly. Information requests, as we've discussed, it seems like we get to these all out of order, but we still have some information requests that will work out with Lincoln County Healthcare. I'm sorry if you think I was putting you on the spot.
We can work it out.
If sometimes we feel frustrated, it's because we are.
Only because we are.
On to several people have come in to look at the information that Lincoln County Healthcare has voluntarily given us, which is going to be a chore for us to digest. But the first person that I want to have report is Peggy Powis has taken the role as our volunteer coordinator. And she is absolutely a gift from God. Please. Peggy, can you explain to us what you've been doing?
Thanks, Jim. I'm Peggy Powis, and I will do this quickly. I even wrote everything down so I could do it quickly. When you walked in, you were given an outline. Welcome to what is now the Community Volunteer Communication Center, this table and these walls. Inspired by the Excel spreadsheet provided by Freddie Luke, who said she was leaving town yesterday, but thanks be to God, didn't. The task force now has this communication center. And we will staff it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. This week, Freddie and Libby and Chuck Dinsmore and I made sure that anybody who had signed up for anything at any committee or at any meeting was contacted. Hopefully, if you had your name on a list, you have heard from us this week. Out of those contacts, we now have a working volunteer list. And we're not handing out this information willy-nilly. If you have a question about that, I'm happy to address it after the meeting personally. But from this list, we now have this sort, of who has decided what group they want to work in, what group they want to work in. If you want to see where your name is and to see if you want to be assigned someplace else or change your affiliation, come to this list with a pencil and change it, and we'll put it differently in the database. In addition to the people resources, the communications office proposed, as you can see in the paper that you got when you came in, to collect community ideas and questions and to manage them in some fashion. And this week's effort in that regard collected many but not all of the questions from various emails and discussions of those that appeared in the Booth Bay Register. Dr. Stones are missing. They came to me late in ability to get them up. Joe Gillardin had some great questions. They came to me and they'll be up next week. Also, Sarah Sherman's came to me and they're not included here. But if you have asked a question and you're wondering what in the world did they hear me, because we keep asking a lot of the same questions and hopefully having the same answers, but we all want to be on the same page. If you have asked a question and have been wondering who will address it, you will see that sort hanging on the wall. Those are the questions sorted by the group they have been funneled to. If you want to see if you personally have asked a question, I'm going to leave this on our communications table, and as of today's date, I guess it's yesterday's date, 9, 10, 12, these are all the questions that are there, only they're sorted by name, and sadly we didn't have first name, last name in the database when we started, so they're sorted by first name. If you want to see what question you ask, and if indeed it's positioned correctly, look up your first name. It's in alphabetical order. So you've got it by where it's been channeled, and you've got it by your name if you've asked a question. All right. If you want to add a question, come into our communications, and there's nobody here, come into our communications area, get a little sticky note from our communications shelf, write down your name, the date, and your question, and leave it on the table. And I promise you it will get put in the database and channeled someplace. Let's see. Every work group will have its own folder, and we have 2 here now. Our staff, our volunteer staff that was here on Monday, worked on fundraising. And basically what each folder will have is first a sheet that explains who your contact people are, and then any information that goes along with that particular group. Like the fundraising has the questions that have been asked about fundraising and the ideas that have been channeled there. So if you think you've given an idea about fundraising, come in, pick up the book, see if it's here. If it's not, write us a note on one of those little sticky things, okay? Maybe a more complete example of how the book is working and quickly is the notebook for Bruce's group that we added this morning. And again, here is the first page with all the contact people. There will be a point person, hopefully for each of the work groups. So if you have a question, you don't need to contact everybody. You don't need to be sending out emails to the whole world. The point person will get back to you, or the scribe. And in this case, it's Patty Siebold, and not only is this information in the booklet, but you get everything that's been handed out by Bruce. So you have the agenda from today's meeting. Patty sent me the minutes from that meeting right before I came to this meeting that I can hear. But Bruce alluded to the Mayo project, and it's in here. So if you want your own copy, you can come in and give a nice donation for making copies, because you're making lots and lots of paper, and it's expensive. But articles about the smaller rural hospitals, any kind of comps, hospitals that have the similar numbers of beds that are operating. There's all kinds of information for the Bruce group, and it will be kept up to date. Then, how will everybody know what's going on? We hope to have every Friday. We're not going to send everybody all of this piles and piles of paper or long emails. We will send one sheet. It will be your communications center update, and all it will list is those things that are new this week. We will have, but instead of all of those questions, we would say the questions are sorted by work group on the wall. If you want to know, as of whatever the date was, that Bruce McDonald's group has minutes from a meeting, and the next meeting is going to be. So it's just going to be a list of things. It's not going to be tons and tons of paper. And last, we are also collecting newspaper clippings, magazine articles, anything that's been written about this particular effort. And so if you have missed it, you don't have to go back, or you don't have to go to the library or to the Blue Bay Register archives. Hopefully we will have in here all of the articles from the Register or the Lincoln County News or Coastal Journal or wherever it has appeared. We will have those clippings here. And last but not least, we've asked John if he will supply us with copies of those things that are appearing on Channel 7, so that perhaps during our work hours we have a projector and we can show those if you want to come in and see the meeting again or see what somebody said, just to validate it. So we hope to be your resource. I think it's been said over and over. I don't know how many of you were debaters in high school or college, but you had to be prepared when you went to a debate to pull out one side or the other. You had to be able to argue both sides of the issue. And that made for a very smart person. So I think that it's incumbent on all of us to know and be able to argue both sides of the issue. And hopefully the Communication Center will have everything here so you can get smart on either side.
Amen.
Thank you.
Can we get this stuff
Now you've got
posted someplace?
somewhat analysis.
The information that's being collected?
That's what we're trying to do, is Peggy's gonna help us try to funnel all the resources from volunteers and all the questions that are being there, and then we're gonna bring them back to the task force.
No, I mean like get them on a website someplace where we can.
Yeah, that is one of the next things that we need to figure out is
Because I got all the,
How
Channel
we-
7 stuff, and you can get a link to that.
how we communicate all of this is something that we're trying to still figure out. And we still have the Google group, we still have Channel 7, the brand new St. Andrews Facebook site. We're trying to take all of the free avenues that we have, and then we'll probably try to utilize the town's website at some point.
And we also have all this special time with you people. Right. We enjoy this.
But we've got to have.
With Google Docs, you can put almost everything out there too. So.
But we've got to have it organized before I think we're ready to put it out. And that's one thing that I am happy to have people like Peggy and where's Freddie Luke back there? People like that are ambitious, that want to take the bull by the horn, takes the pressure off. The initial surge was kind of felt by the town of Blue Bay staff and by the task force members. And really, this is a community kind of engagement. We need everybody. So somebody like Peggy can get us pointed on having people that have interests on these particular groups to really focus their efforts.
I've gotten requests from people like in Bristol and Waldoboro and Damascotta for this information too. So.
Good. The most important thing, if you didn't pick up on what Peggy said, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 to 4, did I get that correctly? They will be in here, Peggy and her volunteer staff will be in here trying to organize volunteer efforts. So if you're passionate about helping but you're unfocused on what you can do, come see Peggy Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 to 4. She'll get you somewhere.
Can I just add one more thing? All of these work groups need leadership. We have people's names, but we need leadership. So we need someone in each of these groups to say, I'll be the point person, and someone else to say, I'll be the scribe. And then to be able to do this information. It's only good if we've got somebody that's going to pick up everybody's lives are scattered, so we need more people to say, yes, I'll be a leader.
You have a couple of them already, right? You have a couple of them already, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir, you have a comment?
Yes, I'm the one that set up the Google group, and I tried to make it a little simpler because it was I think there was a handicap to getting people on it. And it's set up now so that if I get the email of anybody who wants to be on, I can just sign you on to it. And what that gives you the ability to do then, you can just send one email to this one email address, and it'll go to everybody on the group. So whatever you want to say on whatever subject or whatever pertaining to St. Andrews, you would send an email. It would go to everyone. They wouldn't see your email. It would be anonymous. They would only see your display name, whatever you want to use. And if they reply, their reply will also go to everyone on the group. So it's a way for just everyone to communicate with each other. I have a sheet here, so if anybody wants to sign up, if I can pass this around. What I would need is basically your name, a display name. You can, if you leave it blank, I'll just use your name. It can also, by default, it uses like the first part of your email name. So if it's like Joe123 at Hotmail, it would say Joe123. But if you can just put your choice of what you want for a display name, and put your email, and then you have a choice as to how to receive the messages. You can either receive every message as somebody sends it, which may be a little too much. Well, right now, it won't be, but if more people join, I think there's around 15 to 20 people on it now. So you can either get every email as it's sent, or you can get a once a day compilation of all the emails that were sent the day before. So,
Does it have like a Facebook link too?
I looked into Facebook and that, and it's kind of, everybody would then have to join Facebook, and it's...
No, I'm saying that's another way you can join the group too, is you can link it to your Facebook account too.
Link from.
Oh, but, okay. I haven't used...
Right at the bottom.
Yeah.
I put a comment in there the other day, and I just tapped my Facebook link.
But if someone sends me, an email, I can add them that way too. I'll have their email address. I have my email address on top of here. And once you join, you'll get an email from the group at some point saying you joined. And at that point on, you just send emails to that address.
Excellent.
So if I can start with you.
And I think the Google group is informative. I'm one of the people that's on there, and I like the group. If we can get some of the information that we're collecting on the Google group, maybe that's the avenue that's best for getting the information out there. But, you know, as many avenues for getting public input or public discussion out there as possible. So you can also go to the St. Andrews Facebook site, and we've put the link to the Google group on the Facebook site. So if you can't, and then if that is all too complicated, which it's kind of complicated to me, just email me. I'll send you the link to that. To the Google
Actually,
group.
like I said, you don't really, I changed the way it works. So the instructions you may have seen like in the paper and that, I made it easier so that basically you don't have to sign up. You send me an email, I can sign you up. You don't have to actually, which I just learned recently, to communicate via email to a Google group, you don't even have to have a Google account, which makes it a lot easier. So you don't have to sign up with them. All you have to do is get added to the group.
Thank you.
Next, we had a brief discussion, Scott Lash from the ambulance service, about how we thought the task force could complement the already existing effort from the ambulance service to try to figure out what happens April 1st. If I can recap our discussion, is that I think the task force work group for the ambulance service is supposed to be complementary to whatever the ambulance service is doing. I don't think we want to get into the regulatory or tell the ambulance service how to provide their service. We want to just provide extra hands and extra people to help the ambulance in any way that they see fit. The ambulance service had their first, it's not the first meeting, it's one of many meetings with the Lincoln County Healthcare, and I asked Scott if he could brief the task force on how that went.
Sure. We met today at the Gregory House. We've been meeting a couple of times since this was announced. And today the focus of the meeting was to start to identify some of the challenges and the needs that the ambulance service is going to have moving forward, both with staffing and equipment, which also drives what the funding issues are going to be. Obviously, this is going to be happening in the last quarter of our budget. So that's going to present a different set of challenges, but getting past this year's budget, moving forward as to what impact this is going to have with transport times, the patient load that we're going to see, and how we're going to have to deliver health care down here. So we met with them today to just kind of start discussion as to what the numbers are going to look like budget-wise and what the equipment needs are going to be to take care of that.
So I know there's a lot of people that have volunteered to help the ambulance service. Scott is going to be the point man for the ambulance service needs, because I think he knows them more intimately than anybody else. Scott and Robbie right next to him. So I think they know the ambulance service concerns. So they're going to act as our point man. I was going to tell Peggy that. And we'll get contact information for them. Any questions from the task force on how the meetings between Lincoln County Healthcare? Because I think that's the biggest unknown is April 1st. What does the ambulance service look like? Financial report, and I think we'll use that as an opportunity to talk about fundraising. But as of today, we received $4,210 in donations to the St. Andrews fund that we put together at the town of Booth Bay. Now, $3,500 of that is already accounted for. So, I mean, you can do the math. There's $710 remaining in that account after that expense has been paid. So then we had a brief discussion about how is fundraising going to be organized, and I think we have some questions that we need to pose at the table because there's a lot of people that want to get in front of the effort to fundraise, and this task force only goes as far as the funds available.
Go ahead, somebody's got something, but
I was going to turn it to Valerie.
Let me say this to you folks. You got people up here, and we're working hard. There are volunteers out here that are working hard. I'll say this to the camera, I'll say it to you folks. There are going to be expenses. If we are going to save St. Andrews, it's going to cost money. There's no other way to put it. There are going to be legal expenses, like they said, just what we're putting out in paperwork, printing. We're going to need people to step forward and give money to this process if you want us to keep this thing going, because there comes a point where if we run out of cash on this thing, it's going to die on the vine. And I know I don't want to see that happen, and I'm pretty confident you people in this audience don't, and I'm pretty confident you people at home don't want this to. So there's a mechanism here at the Booth Bay Town Office to donate to the Save St. Andrews Fund. And if that's what you want to have happen, you got to make it happen with your dollars. And it's just that simple. If at the end of the day there's any money left over, it will all go to the Booth Bay Region Ambulance Service. And with that said, I don't want people to think if you donate to this, well, I gave to that, so I've given to the ambulance service. No, not necessarily. Because we could very well spend every dime of this money fighting this fight. But it's something, if you want us to keep this thing going, we're volunteering our time. God bless this guy for the work he's doing in his spare time. We're going to need some funds. There's no other way to put it. And yes, at the end of the day, if there's anything left over, we'll proudly give it to the ambulance service. But you need to get that out to your friends, and you need to think about it yourselves, and you people on Channel 7, you need to think about it too.
Can you take checks tonight?
I can't give you a receipt tonight, but some people at the end of our
I think we
last...
need to pass the hat every time we get together.
At the end of the last meeting, some people that didn't need receipts handed us checks right here. We accepted them.
The check is a receipt.
There seems to be a hat right back there.
Anybody wants it, there's a hat in the back of the room.
Now, when you're making checks out, they're payable to the town of Booth Bay, but you want to put in there for the St. Andrews project, and consult with whoever does your taxes to make sure that you can write that off. We don't give legal advice here at the town office.
You take cash as well.
Well, we always take cash. Yes.
But I think the underlying thing here, though, we don't want to take away from the ambulance service.
In any way, shape, or form.
No.
We don't want to take away from the ambulance service.
If this effort dries up right now, $710 gets sent to the ambulance service for their capital improvement fund. Robbie, can you tell me how many ambulances that buys? $710?
I was going to say, you might get a set of tires, but not quite.
So I think there's some efforts that need to be had, and a volunteer to put up a banner has already been stated to the task force. what goes on the banner has been the discussion.
I kind of like, have a heart, save St. Andrews. That's my wish.
I got a suggestion.
Ready?
St. Andrews, here for good.
Ooh, I like that. That's better than mine.
But I think there is some concern that the money that is donated may not save St. Andrews. We don't want to send a false impression that that money will save it. Money goes to the effort that we're doing right now that could lead to saving St. Andrews.
There are a lot of people that buy lottery tickets every week too.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I'd say our chances are probably better than the lottery.
Yeah, a thought I had for...
Not much, but...
A thought I had for the banner is don't break our heart.
Ooh. Good.
I like St. Andrews here for good. I like that one. Here for good. Double entendre there.
So we want the message on the banner to also say where to put your fundraising dollars. And it's here at the Booth Bay Town Office is the answer.
Booth Bay Town Office and all the means that the Booth Bay Town Office can receive funds. So check and cash. You can mail checks into the town office. So our address is P.O. Box 106, Booth Bay, Maine. All of that stuff is on the website. So if you can't remember it, go to townofboothbay.org. All of our contact information is on there. And if you have any questions, call the town office and we'll make it clear to you.
I think you will see other fundraising efforts from the fundraising work group, separate from just the banner. But I think our message on the banner should just be that people can donate here, and then you'll see other information about events or fundraising efforts as we come up with them. Okay. So,
At last night's Booth Bay Board of Selectmen meeting, we broached the topic of taking some of our contingency funds and using it and reallocating them to the St. Andrews project. The board did not make any decisions, and they're contemplating it. But if the people that are Booth Bay residents are like that direction, please let your selectmen know so that they're more confident in any decision that they have to make. I can tell you, I'm probably speaking for our Board of Selectmen, they're reluctant to make this something that they've collected taxes on. They'd rather make it be a community effort. So they're very reluctant to change those funds.
Well, I can tell you, Jim, I brought this up at our selectmen meeting yesterday, and the majority of the board is for taking funds out of our legal line and putting it into this effort. So in 2 weeks, we'll have a vote on that.
In 2 weeks, we plan on bringing it back up at our board meeting. But no indication of obviously how that vote would go. But the people that are from the town of Booth Bay, let your selectmen know what you think about that. So.
Well, I'll let mine know right now. That good.
I knew somebody would go there.
Dan?
There are a lot of people that get the register that don't live here. So, if something...
You getting that, Sue? Yeah.
We'll do it every week. We might have to buy an ad. That was a joke.
I actually don't think it would be a bad idea of some of the small money that we do have here if we wanted to put an ad in and use the money that's already donated. It's probably going to pay for itself pretty quickly if that's what the task force determines.
maybe we could start out with a donated ad.
A donated ad? So I will contact the Booth Bay Register and see if they'd like to donate an ad.
I'll volunteer to donate the
Excellent, thank you.
half a page.
No, not half a page.
A full page, we appreciate that.
I'm sorry, I'm off. I got
No
off.
business.
That's all I have for reports, Chuck. Thank you.
And Valerie, you're gonna get together with the person that wanted to put up the
Doing the
banner?
banner. We have 3 good slogans to choose from, so we'll pick one and put it on the
There
banner
you
and put it
go.
up.
Roll with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When is your interview going to air on Channel 7?
I'll have to discuss that with John. I guess that depends on how much he has to edit.
He doesn't even know when he's filming it.
And let me apologize for that. We've been frantically working on this project, so if I mix in dates and times and information. But that'll be up to Channel 7 when they have it available.
Most likely Friday.
Most likely Friday.
Is there any special time that you put those on?
That will be circulating, looping.
Probably 2 in the morning.
Thing going.
John,
Besides this.
John, when you put it on air, you also put it on the website, so you can access it on the website at any time that's convenient for you.
Yes. Video on demand.
Well done, Chuck.
On Friday.
That was nicely done.
So the expectation is probably Friday. And we'll definitely report whether that's on air at the next Tuesday meeting. So, I mean, sometime between then and.
If you like us on Facebook, then you'll know exactly when it goes on.
That's wonderful. Could we suggest that it be like number 1 of a series?
Well, I think everybody that's discussed it brings up a good point, that it is one opinion. And once it's done, I think maybe we could get a better idea if there's a counterpoint. But let's see what we produce first. I don't think there's any expectation on Lincoln County Health part or my part on what we're actually going to get. Let's see what we
Because
get.
I would reiterate, he will not know the questions before we sit down with him. We'll be forming the questions and he'll respond to them appropriately.
And you will have thought about them for a week or two, and he's been thinking about them for 10 years.
I'll give you that.
Old business, Jim.
Under old business, I just wanted to make sure that we got out of the way the joint agreement status. We were waiting for Blue Bay Harbor. I think Valerie has an update.
We've signed it.
We've
and
signed.
approved it.
So if all 4 towns have jointly agreed to this agreement that sets up some very small parameters of the task force. I'd like to give credit to the 4 town selectmen for doing that. That's 4 town efforts put together. I know it's a very vanilla agreement, but the selectmen deserve some credit for doing that.
Yes.
You deserve some credit for all the work you've done behind the scenes to help us out.
Thank you.
New business, recap the next meeting.
Yeah, that's all I had that I think is action items. I know it's 9 o'clock at night, and I know that tomorrow is gonna come really fast, but I'm gonna ask the task force members to please still give me some questions. Time is no issue. I sleep with my laptop. So give me your questions, and I throw it out to the public, townmanager@townofboothbay.org. Send them out. If you have questions, we may reformat the questions because we might get the same question 10 times and want to put it in a better phrase to cover as many of those questions as possible. But honestly, if you go home and you think of that question, just email it in the middle of the night. I'll get it. We'll get it on there.
Meeting nights, usually they're on Tuesdays.
Yeah, Olivia.
Could it be possible at all to once on Tuesday or Wednesday? One reason is all your fire departments and your ambulance meetings and things like that are on Tuesday nights.
That's true.
So a lot of them come out of meeting.
I've got that scheduled, man, I don't know.
And I know that a lot of them would like to attend if they could. And that's both the harbor and Blue Bay and
Is that one of those ones that we could do a digital discussion on meeting nights? And,
Yeah.
I mean, the most important thing that we nailed down was that Monday was off the table for everybody. Everybody here has Monday meeting. Well, you have Wednesday.
I have a Wednesday selectmen's meeting.
Wednesday selectmen's meeting. So we were really trying to figure out our task force members' schedules. And luckily they looked at my schedule too to try to figure out what was the best night, and Tuesday stuck out. Reoccurring meeting nights are helpful so that I mean, there's a lot of people trying to stay on par with this. So reoccurring was one of the things that we factored in. The fact that we're getting free information out to the public via the Booth Bay Register. Wednesday is when they're actually going to press. So I bet Sue probably types this out tonight and has it ready in the morning or something like that. So Tuesday didn't make some sense, but if we can get some discussion on it.
We will give it consideration, Helen. Thank you.
So let's reiterate what the action items that we want to obviously continue having volunteers come to Peggy, and Peggy's going to funnel the volunteers. One thing that I think needs to happen is we need to find more leaders to head up these work groups. And the leaders don't necessarily have to, once again, the leaders don't necessarily have to be the expert on the topic. The leaders have to be somebody that's willing to commit to being the point person, making sure that all the efforts are being done. Peggy's doing a really good job of making sure that we know what the questions are and we know where the questions are. If we can get people to lead those work groups, it's going to take a lot of pressure off the task force, off the staff, off Peggy. So keep that in mind. Anybody that's paying attention that says, my neighbor has a lot of time and is really a community-minded person, go up and tell your neighbor to come and help us out. So I think that's an action item. We need to recruit leaders for these work groups. Luckily, we have, like for the ambulance service, we have people like Robbie and Scott that can lead those efforts. But we still need more leaders.
Well, we only have 4 groups, right?
Well, there's some subgroups there.
Yeah, but I mean fundraising. Who's the leader on fundraising right now? I know that I want to make Valerie the leader, but I don't think she has time.
I'll move that.
You'll move for more time in that.
We're trying to keep the work groups as free from restrictions as possible. If the work group becomes we need to meet at this time where everybody's putting their schedules together, we're going to run out of time. April 1st will be here in no time.
Right.
So pretty fluid.
So we need to be fluid. That's a good word for it. But we need leaders that are also fluid that can handle that. So one of the action items is I think we need to still continue to recruit leaders for these task forces. Obviously, follow-up is my marching orders with legal. I'll continue on that path. When's the next meeting with the ambulance service? Do you know yet?
The first Tuesday, I think. Second Tuesday?
Second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday.
You're meeting the second Tuesday of every month?
So that'll be what, October 9th?
Representative McDonald, when's your next meeting? Do you establish?
Yeah, Tuesday next at 9 o'clock here.
So you're meeting every Tuesday at 9?
Well, we meet until we run out of topics to talk about.
The fundraising efforts, we don't have a leader yet, right? So
That's right.
So it's very fluid, but we're going to run out of money. So I think that goes back to leader recruitment. We still need some information. I'll follow up with Stacy and we'll try to get that information. That information is going to become paramount at some point.
All right, let's do
it. Next meeting,
September 18th.
September 18th at 7 p.m. Still volunteers, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. Peggy's in the office. We got everything?
That's our RPC meeting, so I might be late now.
That's the RPC meeting. What about, did you talk about scheduling it here?
We did. I met with Mary Ellen
yesterday. We talked about it, but we had some logistical problems with the county planner and get him down here. He's in a meeting another
What
morning.
time do you meet?
I'm sorry?
What time?
6.
Our meeting's often around 2.5, 3 hours, so I'm not sure what will happen next week, but.
I plan on leaving that meeting early, obviously, to come here, but.
And that's a small executive committee meetings, and we have 2 or 3 other things to talk about, so it could be that this topic, and we're going to talk about this project for sure, but it could be a full board meeting in another month that we could arrange to have some of these folks present there, because we have 20 people from around the county.
Fair enough.
So your meeting on that date is going to be pretty paramount to your efforts in doing the economic development.
Well,
We're going to talk about
we're
it.
going to talk about it. I'm not worried about that. I'm going to update them. I think I've kept our leadership abreast about that. But we also have our own budget to talk about next week and a couple other things. So, but in the October meeting, which is the full board, then I think that would be a great opportunity for years like this group.
At this point in time, what does the task force need to do to help Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission on your efforts?
Well, we're, obviously I'm vice chair of that.
Right.
Right.
And we're pretty
We've got
much.
a pretty good conduit.
Whatever he tells you?
Yeah.
Stewart, everything.
We're trying.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're getting some information from Cindy,
Yeah.
from the hospital, so.
Okay.
I would limit public discussion at this point. Let's get out of Dodge. Well,
We've had it all.
At this point, in our effort to keep the meetings under 2 hours, I'd ask for your forgiveness, but we're going to skip the last public comment. We've had quite a bit of public comment tonight, and to be honest, you all know where to find us. And I look forward to
you
hearing...
haven't had any trouble finding us.
No. So I beg your forgiveness on skipping the last public comment this evening. And that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
I'm Andrew Fogel, and Peggy Pinkham and I are the data analysis committee at this point. If any of the task force has specific data that they would like us to try to get together for them, please let me know.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
That's unanimous.
Thank you again for coming out this evening.
Yeah.
Oh, Jim.